Hello and welcome to the ICC International Trade and Prosperity Week. Welcome, this is day 3 of the event and I'm delighted to welcome a great panel today. We're talking all about digital trade. We have a session as well coming up at 2 o'clock later today that you might want to take part in. If you haven't registered, simply go into your Swapcard account and add it to your calendar. It's open to all, so please do take part. It's featuring the Digital Standards Initiative, and it's all about interoperability and digital standards and the adoption. It features some great corporate speakers, so I do encourage you to attend that later session if you can. If you can't make it, but you want to watch it, it will be on demand for you to watch afterwards. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel for today. I'm delighted to welcome Alastair Tempest, who is CEO of Ecommerce Forum Africa, who's going to be leading the discussion along with Michelle Chivunga as well, who I'll introduce later. Alastair, please turn on your video so we can see you.
Hello and welcome to everyone.
Hi, Alastair. So I'll hand over to you to introduce the rest of the panelists and to take the conversation forward.
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to split this into 2 parts. The first part I'll moderate with Michelle Chivunga of the Global Policy House. Michelle and I have worked on many different projects, so I'm really delighted to have her here. And Anna Ekeledo, from, I think I pronounced that with a Spanish accent, actually, from AfriLabs. AfriLabs is one of the most important bodies in Africa today, I think, because it's innovation hubs. And we will be setting the scene. After that, we have 3 presenters presenting their companies, and I will let them introduce themselves in part 2, which will be, as I said, moderated by Michelle Chivunga. So let us get going immediately. Firstly, what we wanted to do, and I'd like to really thank the ICC so very much indeed for allowing us to have a session within this resetting of the global economy week, a session on digital trade within Africa. Africa is changing enormously, like everywhere else. It was hit by the COVID, which has made a very big effect. But one thing that has come through, and which certainly Anna will mention, is the entrepreneurship of young Africans and how they have driven the economy forward despite all the problems of COVID and the pandemic. What we are now faced with is the start of an enormous experiment, the African Free Trade Area, also known as CFTA. And so please, Michelle, if you could give us an outlook of that and some ideas within the digital space of how important this is going to be for Africa and for the African economy and for the rest of the world and the global economy as well. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Alastair. Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. It's fantastic to be here. Always a pleasure, I think, to join the ICC. They're doing some great work, and it's fantastic to be hosted by the ICC, especially looking at the continent of Africa, which we all know is the next growth continent. So I'm very excited to be here. And Alastair, thank you so much for your comments. I think, when we start to look at the continental free trade area, really, this is probably the biggest policy shift, I think, when it comes to the African continent. And the whole point of the CFTA is really to help to boost trade intra-regional trade, and also, access to investments for the continent. Why is it so important? The CFTA obviously came into life really, beginning of this year, but a lot of the planning was happening, years beforehand. So there's been kind of this journey towards looking at how can we boost intra-African trade, how can we look at industrialization across the continent, and how can we support our small medium enterprises to actually boost growth, across the continent. So it's one of the most fundamental, if not the fundamental shift that I think the African continent is witnessing right now. In terms of trade, I think, we have, I think something like 16% intra-regional trade across the continent at the moment. We want to be able to boost that and make sure that, countries are trading with one another, African countries are trading with one another, but there's also the competitiveness in terms of how Africa positions itself with the global market. And we want to place Africa as a very competitive environment so we can trade, on equal level playing field with the rest of the world. So I think the CFTA definitely shapes and, provides that foundation to actually do that. Quite a few countries have, ratified and have come into the CFTA, and there's still quite a lot of work, where we're looking at the different levels negotiations that are going on. But definitely the momentum, I think, is really helping to boost interest into Africa. We've seen quite a lot of, for example, trade activity that is starting to happen within Africa, but also, sort of cross-border. Which is very, very interesting. I think even here within the UK, and the UK is also obviously interacting quite closely with Africa, and there's been a lot of engagement that is going on. So that's very, very exciting to see. I think you will hear from the panel today, excellent panel, by the way, because we've got a whole mix of people here from different parts of Africa, which is fantastic as well. Because remember, again, just to contextualize, Africa is 55 countries, right? It's not one country, we've got 55 unique nations. And all these 55 unique nations have huge investment opportunities and potential. So I would really urge the audience, so we have a global audience here, to really think about, trading and doing business in Africa, because Africa is open for business. Hand over to you, Alastair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think we have to remember that at the moment, according to, I think it's Brookings, only around about 18% of African trade is traded within Africa. That means that 82% of African trade goes onto the global market, goes particularly obviously to Europe, to the US and North America, and also to China. And it usually goes in the form of raw materials or raw agricultural goods, unprocessed. What the African Free Trade Area is really aiming to do, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Michelle, is to try to create a renaissance of industry which will sell and buy within Africa, within the 55 nations. And as you rightly said, those are 55 nations who are very different. And the African continent is an enormous continent. We shouldn't forget that either. So there are lots of problems like logistics and things like that have to be got over. But they are, I think, surmountable if we all work together.
Yeah, no, I think just quickly, Alisa, it's a very good point around, that boosting of the intra-regional trade, which is obviously trying to make sure that African countries can trade with each other. I think when we've just got a paper that's coming out fairly recently around regional value chains and the importance of regional value chains, especially for the continent of Africa, because if you can boost that internal market, then you're able to start to see growth right across the regional value chain. So that's really, really important point. And I think if we can take that 16% all the way up to 25%, then we've already started to map out the benefits that come with that, the benefits that come with, African nations trading with each other, and the ripple kind of not necessarily just sort of GDP benefits, but the benefits in terms of skills development, access to networks, access to data, which is really necessary for small businesses you hear from today.
Yes, I agree entirely. Now, I'd like to bring Anna into this conversation. As I mentioned, AfriLabs is the gathering of innovation hubs I think it's something like 48 countries now out of the 55.
49.
49. Oh, okay, right.
And we'll soon announce over 50 actually, so.
Oh, fantastic. So you're in the like the spider in the web in the middle of this enormous gathering of people. You are actually going to have your conference in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time.
Yes, 3 weeks' time.
So if anyone wants to join that, look, I'm sure they could look at AfriLabs website and join. It is, I've been to some and they are fantastic because these are innovation hubs from all over the place, doing all sorts of different things. But what about, in particular, trade and e-commerce and also fintechs as well? Can you give us some idea, some trends maybe that you've been noticing over the last few years?
Yeah.
Or since pre-COVID?
Yeah, thank you, Alastair. No, I mean, I will speak to both pre-COVID and after COVID because, I mean, at this point, the ecosystem is moving so fast that we really don't differentiate as much, right? Now, of course, as you mentioned, over the past few years, we've seen some exciting developments in the innovation and technology ecosystem, especially by innovative tech-driven startups who are developing new products focused on facilitating digital commerce between individuals and across businesses. Now, of course, with the emergence of COVID-19 and the world basically on lockdown and becoming contactless for a long period of time, we've seen the sharp rise of the consumption of digital products and innovations, especially in the e-commerce sector, right? So we've seen an increase in digital banking and other fintech products and solutions. We've seen an increase in the adoption of various e-commerce platforms across the continent, e-logistics, you know, to facilitate transportation and delivery of these goods across, you know, cities, across countries, peer-to-peer payment platforms, supply management and data analytics solutions, as well as an increase in adoption of Internet of Things and AI technologies and solutions. Now, these are all innovations which facilitate digital trade across Africa, basically. Now, even in terms of digital transactions, research has shown that Africa has reached $22.6 billion in digital transactions. And as of 2020, over 55.2% of live mobile money services were in Africa, right? So in terms of mobile money, for example, Africa remains at the forefront of innovation and expansion. And continues to foster a range of partnerships to lead the industry to new highs and increase financial inclusion. Now, this presents a huge opportunity for our community, of course. And, you know, just as previously discussed by you and Michelle, the African Continental Free Trade Area signed earlier this year by majority of African countries represents a great opportunity to support economic transformation and industrialization. Now, however, for these innovations and solutions to be successfully adopted by the African population and to really harness the economic opportunities and economic advantages of digital trade, the right infrastructure and policy and regulatory environment have to be in place across the continent. And this is something I'm happy to speak about, you know, later on in the panel as we discuss further.
Yes, certainly. I think one of the great things which Michelle also mentioned is the ability to scalability. Economics of scale, that small industries in countries are now able to look at a much larger market across at least part of the continent. So it may be to start with regionally, but at least it will start to give a scalability which has not existed beforehand. There are issues, particularly, and that's why I mentioned fintech, been issues about payments. You've got presumably a lot of people within your innovation hubs who are in fintech. And fintech seems to be, of all the new digital economy sectors, the biggest one for Africa. Is that, do you feel that's correct?
Oh, absolutely. In terms of, yes, in terms of the subsector of our innovation ecosystem, which have been the most successful so far in scaling, as well as attracted the most funding across the continent, has been fintech solutions and businesses.
Yeah, yeah. I find it incredible. I mean, Flutterwave, sorry, was the second unicorn from Africa at the beginning of this year. Jumea being the first, the year before last. But we've now had another 2 unicorns which have been created just in this year. So we've had 3 unicorns coming out of Africa, a thing which people didn't believe would happen beforehand. Do you have, talking about investment, because this is one of the big issues, what do you feel about that? And Michelle too, please come into this question.
Sure, go ahead, Anna. I think you were
okay.
something.
Okay. Yes. Okay, yes. I mean, we've year after year, you know, over the past decade and over the past 5 years, we've seen an increase, a significant increase in investment into tech startups on the continent, right? In fact, what happens is that by the first quarter, increasingly by the first quarter of each year, over the past 3 years, we see collectively the investment into African startups surpass the amount of the previous year for the entire year, right? So we're really excited about, you know, the attraction of investment and funding into African startups. And we're excited that investors are now beginning to see, you know, startups on the continent as a specific asset class that has the opportunity to bring significant returns, right? So that's quite exciting for us. However, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done, right? So globally, when it comes to investment in startups, of course, African startups, unfortunately, still receive least funding, right? We do not have as much angel investors, for example, which bridges the gap between that idea stage, seed funding, and, you know, the scale-up growth stage, which is where there's an increased funding, but then there's a gap in terms of that early stage. And one of the things we're looking to do as you know, ecosystem builders, even AfriLabs, and working with other partners like the African Business Angels Network, is increase the amount of angel investments that go into early stage startups, right? Other challenges we face is, of course, gender, right? I think there was a recent statistics that showed that it was a very small percentage, I can't remember the amount, of funding that went to female funded or co-founded or led tech startups on the continent, right? And this is something that we definitely have to work on, both in attracting investment into women-led startups or women-founded startups, but also increasing the amount of female investors on the continent, because that is one factor, you know, just by human nature and understanding, we still are at a point where people tend to invest in people that that look like them. Even, I mean, this is one challenge that we faced even between white investors and Black founders, even on the continent. That's another challenge we face, that a lot of it, you know, it doesn't go as much to Black founded startups as much. Now, in terms of the regulatory environments and policies, that's one aspect that would certainly take things to the next level, right? We've seen an increased investment to startups, but there's still a lot to be done, right? We need increased incentives for investors on the continent. I mean, I was quite happy to, when Rwanda announced basically removing taxes from capital gains gotten from returns from investment into African startups. That in itself is an incentive that would attract investments, right? So things like investor protection laws. And then just generally the stability of the different African economies, right? in Africa is very important in attracting investment, right? So looking at things like the political stability, looking at issues of exchange rate is such a big deal, you know, and then just generally even looking at the regulatory environments that regulate startups and their work and the various sectors in which they operate in, right? We've had situations, for example, in Nigeria where you know, all of a sudden cryptocurrency has been banned, right? And increasingly there are a lot of startups operating in that model. It facilitated digital trade, it facilitated payments and all of that. But then with the outright ban, even without that period of consultation and, you know, all of that, that basically made a lot of businesses, you know, either shut down, lose revenue, and for investors, you know, lose their returns, right? This has happened in other forms of startups and across various sectors as well. We also look at issues like the internet shutdowns that has happened in quite a number of African countries, from Zimbabwe to Cameroon to Nigeria to, you know, East Africa. You know, all these significantly affect businesses, and with extreme state actions such as that, and businesses either losing revenue, significantly losing their profits, or even having to shut down, these basically reduce, you know, the likelihoodness of investors coming into the continent, right? So these are all measures that need to be addressed. These are serious issues that need to be addressed in order to really attract the sort of investment into African startups that startups in other continents have access to.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that's excellent. In a nutshell, where we stand. Michelle, would you like to add to that?
Definitely. I mean, fantastic overview from you know, from Anna there. A couple of things. I think for me, you know, the climate is particularly important. You know, the sort of that regulatory clarity is particularly important. I would talk from the angle of an investor, you know, ourselves, right, and also from the angle of a business, you know, trying to seek investment. Because you get very different perspectives when you're speaking to actually a business who is trying to source investment, as well as from an investor point of view. So from an investor point of view, investors want clarity. You know, they want to be in an environment where they're not taking on too much risk, because already there's that perception that, you know, if I'm putting my money down, am I going to get it back? Number one, you know, what environment am I operating in, right? Is it secure for me to operate in that environment? Do I understand the environment? You know, before we even get to the businesses in terms of investors evaluating the actual businesses. So I think the climate is very important. And I think even at the African Union, we're very aware, of course, you know, Alastair, you've been part of the working groups where we have raised this issue numerous times around how it's important to have that regulatory clarity and making sure that the policies that you're actually coming out with are fit enough to actually support those businesses, for example, trying to source finance, but also support the investors. We've got the fair that's coming up, you know, the trade fair coming up towards the end of November, which is really, you know, geared at trying to promote investment channels to Africa, right? And the significance, I think, around investment is underplayed a little bit, because without actual finance and capital and liquidity flowing, very, very difficult to actually implement a lot of the things we talk about, including the CFTA. So if we are going to bring the CFTA to life, we do have to have a certain level of investment, and that investment has to be geared and channeled towards the small, medium enterprises that we are trying to support, because at the end of the day, 70–80% of Africa is made up of small businesses and made up of informal businesses, which we often don't hear about, right? You know, yes, we have a very exciting fintech ecosystem that's starting to develop across Africa. And for me, being in the fintech ecosystem, I'm super proud of what's going on, you know, on the continent. We are leading the world. Let's not even kid that. We are leading the world. The unicorns you're seeing are just a start, you know, and we're going to see more and more unicorns. I'm very excited about the many women, for example, who are actually coming up with fintech solutions on the continent, who are actually coding and producing those blockchain or, you know, AI products. Very, very exciting. But I think we also need to give them a bit, you know, more support, especially what Anna was saying around actually, are we giving them, equipping them, one, with the right access to finance? So, you know, gender lens investment is very, very important, I think, on the continent. Are we supporting more fund managers to come to market in Africa? There's a couple of initiatives right now, and I applaud the African Development Bank, because the ADB is very much focused around supporting more women, to look at investments, right? With a lot of initiatives that they're starting to set up. We need more and more of those specifically tailored towards the African women. The other core is also to have internally driven investment markets, and stronger capital markets within Africa, because that is what is actually going to generate a lot of the investments that you need to be able to support the businesses. So we're starting to see more African investors coming to market, which again is very, very exciting, even within the sort of blockchain space, which is fairly new, on the continent. I have had literally in the last month or so about 4 or 5 different VCs, African VCs, who look like me, who sound like me, right? And that excites me, because I'm like, oh yeah, they'll get what I'm talking about, right? They'll get what we're trying to do around crypto, they'll get what we're trying to do around blockchain, and that is what is actually needed. Because, for me, sourcing finance, I think, as a business, I'm talking as a business now, even for us, sourcing finance has been extremely challenging. Right. And we are in a market where I'm here in the city in London, right, where this is a hub of financial services. But for me to navigate that space is extremely difficult, and for the work that we are doing, which is more around blockchain, which is more around cryptocurrency, like Anna said, not every country is receptive to crypto. Not every country understands why we need to even look at crypto. But I give you one statistic, right? About over 105 billion cryptocurrency went into Africa between July last year and June this year. 105 billion. That is not a statistic to ignore. So the market is there, right? Cryptocurrency, in terms of adoption, is starting to grow across Africa. So we cannot ignore it and say, oh yeah, let's just pretend it's not there. Let's just try and ban it, because that's counterproductive. If anything, we saw a lot more adoption from places like Nigeria because of the ban. People are starting to move and shift into Ghana, for example, to do their operations. So you're losing GDP from that activity anyway, because you're banning it. So it's counterproductive. So we do really need to think seriously around, okay, how do we channel investment? How do we encourage more capital market growth in Africa? How do we encourage more, African investors? And then how do we support the small medium enterprises, which we are going to talk about in a little while. Over to you, Alastair.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we've just reached half point, so we can move. I'll stop being moderator, and you can take over.
Anna wanted to say something.
Yes.
Sorry, Anna. Yes.
Yeah, well, there's another trend in terms of investment into African startups, which is really exciting to see, especially through the AfriLabs lens, is also the geographical diversity in which investments flow, right? So a couple of years ago, all the attention was in major countries, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and even within that, the major cities. And while this is true, that a lot of the limelight and startup funding still goes to these countries, but we've certainly seen an increase in other countries that are being recognized as a hub for investment and innovation, such as Egypt, for example, and other countries like Tunisia, Morocco, and even DRC that has raised significant funding over the past couple of years. And then increasingly, we also have other countries in East Africa, Uganda. We're looking at Francophone Africa as well, taking a lot of the, increasingly getting the limelight, and Southern Africa as well. Well, other than, South Africa, but other Southern African countries. So this is interesting to see, and something that we definitely want to see more of. So one of the challenges we even give to investors is look outside the usual suspects, right? There are a lot of fantastic innovations capable of inter-African scale, but also with the ability to serve the global markets as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's an extremely good point to end this particular part on. What I'd like to just say 2 things. One is we have been blessed in Africa by, in many countries, not in South Africa, but in many other countries, open banking. So there's always been an attitude towards open banking. And open banking, therefore, has allowed a lot of mobile money, for example, which is very, very important. And the other thing is that has been enormously helped also by the fact that most Africans, as in 90% or whatever, have a mobile phone. It may not be the most, it may not be an Apple 13 or whatever, but it is a mobile phone and it can be used for mobile money, etc. So becoming a cashless society long before most other areas, most other regions of the world. And I think we need to be aware of that. But I'd like to pass on quickly to Michelle for your session, if I may.
Thank you, Alastair. Thank you, Anna. Absolutely agree with you. You know, we need to spread the investments. It's exciting. By the way, just a quick one again. Google has just announced they're going to invest $1 billion into digital transformation across the continent. So, you know, again, you can just see it's such an exciting time on the continent, which brings me to the exciting bit about this session, which is very much to hear about, you know, from the businesses that we do have with us. So I will start to introduce my my panel here. I've got a great group. You know, I'll start with Oscar from Dream Hub, you know, who is the managing director of Dream Hub. Really lovely to have you. In a minute, I'll let you come on, and then I'll just introduce everyone. And then we have Mostafa, also very, very excited to have you from Sudan, which is really even more interesting. You know, from Khodorgy, who's the CEO of an e-commerce platform. Very nice to have you with us. We have Gbontwi Anyetei as well from Sabla process, which is fantastic. So I think if we kick off with yourself, Oscar, if you do an introduction, please tell us about your business and what you're doing and how you're contributing to the growth on the continent, and welcome.
Hello, Michelle. Good morning, and thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be in this panel today. Well, I wear different hats, but today I'm here as the founder and managing director of Dreams Hub. I'm a business consultant myself, an economist, and I'm a writer, author of 3 books. So Dreams Hub is in Equatorial Guinea. What we do as a research, development, and innovation center, this initiative is aimed at providing technological tools for young people so they could translate their dreams into reality. They could then change and bring those ideas and turn them into projects. So I describe our ecosystem as a very embryonic ecosystem, because we have other countries in Africa who are already far in this development, but we still there baby stepping, but we still assessing and recognizing where we should start, which is by nurture these young people with skills, technological skills for them to. We need to stop playing catch up. I mean, our country and the whole continent, that when there is something, because technology has its own agenda. So we keep on following, but we need to stop playing catch up and then anticipate what we do. And we have 2 groups, how we contribute into the community. We understood that we need to start from the very roots of the matter. So we have 2 groups, and the first one is from 7 to 13 years old at Dreams Hub. They receive free education in ICT. So we call ourselves this project building the next generation of dreamers. So we understand that at this moment is key for them to learn values. So later we could talk about ethics. We could talk about policies, but it's the right time to let them know exactly what are they going to become. And now the second group is more like peer entrepreneurs, which are from any age. So they come to us, they have an idea, we need to listen to them, we need to accompany them and see where can we take their next, their project to the next level, connect them with the ecosystem, connect them with people, investors who can invest in the business. And we need to speak the same language, because some entrepreneurs don't know much about project management. So we are they're stressing that they should learn more about how to manage their own project before they even meet an investor. So I'm going to hand the word back so other people could also, the other panelists could also jump into this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Oscar. I love that. As you know, I'm very passionate about digital skills, upskilling. The next generation of dreamers are fantastic, right? We need the next generation of dreamers to take the continent forward and make CFTA a reality, right? So now moving over to Mostafa, very, very excited to have you here. I'm really, kind of fascinated. When you and I had our chat, I'm fascinated about your business and what you're doing, especially around the e-commerce. So Mostafa, please introduce yourself and give us an overview of what you're covering.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you all? Okay, we can start by, I'm Mostafa from Sudan. If we have, we can say Ali is a farmer who produces tomato. He will sell his tomato for 20 to 40 cents for the kilogram today, okay? At the same time, the retail price is $1 and more. So we have 3 to 4 times the prices. And the problem, we faced this problem 6 years ago. We were planting potato as a graduate from engineering. We want to, okay, Sudan, the farming and the agriculture, the vibes was very great. So we started planting potato and we had the problem of how to sell our goods, how to sell our potato, and we face the broker. We find that there are 4 to 5 layers of middlemen between farmer and end user, and they came with a very big cost that lead to the price to go to 2 to 3 times. So we started an e-commerce called Smart Delivery 5 years ago, and like right now, Khodorgy means the grocery guy in Arabic. Okay, so grocery Khodorgy started 1 year ago. The problem we were facing, the question was why those middlemen are there? Why there are too many layers of middlemen? So we actually see that the problem is groceries, the agriculture, the vegetables has a very short shelf time, so it needs to be accelerated in sales. So those middlemen do this job. And from our background, engineering, we found that we can use technology to accelerate sales. So we built the e-commerce. So the goal was that build an e-commerce, find a better way to do the retailing part, and have a bigger amount of people that buy your products, your vegetables, and this will lead to a bigger amount of vegetables. So we can start buying from the last middleman, the volume will go up, eliminate one, go to the upper until we reach the enough amount that we can buy directly from farmers. So that is the tricky part. So right now we are doing great. I believe that we reach the product market fit. We have more than, we delivered more than 10,000 orders, and we have 20% growth rate monthly. So we are doing great, but the problem is huge. The changing the mindset or changing the culture of people is not that easy in Africa or in the place that they are not easy to adapt technology. So I remember that our first startup was a mobile application. So in the last one, Khodorgy, we started with our WhatsApp groups. We found that many women, who are the main segment that we are targeting, it's better to use WhatsApp than a mobile application. So we have to find a way to reach our customers. We have to give the awareness and to make this adoption go up. And we are doing great. I believe that if we succeed in this part, we can help Ali, the farmer, in the first place, to have the price that he deserves more than the middleman giving to them. So that's Khodorgy and Mostafa. Thank you, Michelle.
Fantastic, Mostafa. I think, the whole middleman, a lot of companies are really, sort of breaking that chain with middlemen, with some of the innovations we're seeing on the continent. So this is a classic example, a great example. And I love the fact that you're working to support the farmers. I think in Africa, 60% of revenue comes from farming, and agriculture is a very, very important sector. And thank you for giving us your examples. I love the fact that you're also focused on women, and trying to support more women as well, which is incredibly important. I would just switch over to Gbontwi and Anyetei. Again, very exciting to hear about your business. I can't wait for you to share with the audience what you're covering. Please, over to you.
Good. I was going to say good morning, but good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm really excited about what I've been listening to today and my fellow panelists. I am, I'm happy to say that my business is far more analog, I think, from what I've heard your offerings are. I am simply in the business of farming and adding value to that which we farm. This is in Ghana, I should say. Also, I didn't really introduce myself. So my name is Gbontwi Anyetei. I'm into agribusiness. I'm based in Ghana. I was raised in the UK, and after really studying agribusiness for a while in Ghana, I decided at this point of entry, because I felt that it would be a good place with this processing of pineapples, coconuts, watermelon into a variety of products, juices, oils, butters as well, that we're exporting to about 5 countries presently. And it would be an ideal opportunity to, one, get into the space of value addition. That's something that we talk about, and is talked about a lot in African spaces, adding value to the commodities instead of just sending out raw. And then also it'll be an opportunity to understand how importing and exportation works, specifically out of Ghana, specifically to other African countries. Other African countries represents 3 of those 6 countries that I spoke about that we are exporting to. I have a friend that is doesn't even like to use the word exporting when we're talking about other African countries, but it is what it is. It's the same landmass, but we know that the borders are there for better or mostly for worse, but that's the reality. And so it is exporting, and we export it to other African countries, while understanding how those routes work as we then look to upscale to other bioproducts that we've got in mind in future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gbontwi. That's really, really interesting. I'm going to reverse the discussion quickly a bit, because I want you guys to just point out, if you were speaking, for example, to the African Union, and what number one would be your comment around actually what challenges are you facing? What do you want to see happen, right? In order to support your businesses to scale and grow, because all 3 of you, everything that you're doing is exactly what we're trying to, to scale across Africa, right, and support Africa. So these are very good classic examples. I want you to just honestly say, one, what is the challenge that you face with your business? How can we help to support, scale, and grow your business? What are you missing? What are you lacking? We just do it in reverse order. So Gbontwi first, Mostafa, and then Oscar.
I would say that to the AU, I would say that it's important, the value, the importance, the priority, I should say, that is placed on investment. It's understandable. We live in a capitalist world. Money is an essential part of what we have to do to move things forward, but also to think about other ways of investment other than just capital. We live, we operate in Africa. We know that there are many things that are plentiful. There's people, there's also the commodities that we are working with, and so very often there is no there may be no shortage of capital that we ourselves can generate if we're given the opportunity. So what I would say is we should aggressively look to support or enable this AFC-FTA borderless situation to really enforce it, because right now it's very much at an administrative stage. As long as we are given those routes to be able to operate with other African countries, export and deal with other African countries, we will make the money we need to scale without needing that priority placed on outside investment. So that is something that is very very simple, and I feel could be sort of basically have that training placed on I don't know, you'd call them administrators, bureaucrats, literally the guards on the borders at our various at the various checkpoints and customs spaces. And another one I would say is to enable in the spirit of digital that we're discussing, enable people who would like to create digital information for us that we can use to enable our business processes. We've got people that we'd like to work with on a customer level, client level, buyers, and so on, but there's not much information known. And there is some information on, and we see that helps those people that operate in those spaces. For instance, one very popular statistic is, I think one that was mentioned in this specific webinar, around how many mobile phones are available and how many people have mobile phones. That's a statistic that goes around a lot, and rightly so. It speaks to a level of tech savvy. It speaks to a level of digital access, as well also as the youth of Africa. We get a lot of statistics about how many of the people on the continent are under X age, usually under 30 years of age, and then people are able to operate using the information about the youthfulness of the continent and use it to leverage various enterprises and initiatives and policies that they're involved in. And for a lot of us agripreneurs working on the continent, there's information that we could be accessed, but it hasn't been put together in a space that we can say, okay, this is a reliable source of information for the amount of people in, say, Nigeria or in Egypt or in South Africa that use this commodity in their daily life or in their weekly life. That would all help us in putting together our various prospectuses and presentations when talking to potential clients and buyers in those countries.
Fantastic. No, thank you. Gbontwi, I think we've got this on record, so we definitely will be sharing this, certainly through the working group that we have with the African Union, but also other policy makers around the world. You know, I think I'd be great. I know that the ICC is got, you know, good reach with policymakers. So all this is really going to reach quite a lot of people. Mostafa, over to you, please, your comment.
Okay, I will start with analysis, a little bit analysis. In Africa, the ecosystem is not that mature enough. So we want to build it up. And the ecosystem has a lot of pillars. So if I'm asking what we need to, where is the help, where we need the help, I will say all the pillars, the policies, the investments, the enablers, the support kind. Here in Sudan, we need, when we call investment, all investors came with the very high expectations, and they don't realize that this ecosystem is not that mature enough. So the expectation should be less, but in reverse, the opportunity is huge. The opportunity is very big, like we saw in the unicorns. So one of the best things that I'm asking is opening more panels like this to open the gap, to bring to enable everyone to see what is in Africa and what is the opportunity and where we can do and what is African entrepreneurs can do and so forth. We need more incubators in the continent. We need more accelerators. We need a policy guidance, we need an investment, but in exchange, the opportunity is not small, it's very huge. That's what we are saying. In Sudan, we have a startup called Terhal. Terhal is like it's Uber-like taxi. It's the taxi application. They make a breakthrough in Sudan, in Khartoum. Khartoum state is the capital of Khartoum, of Sudan. They reach 25% of population. They download their application. This startup make a very big impact in entrepreneurs and Sudanese investors. And I think before Terhal or before this successful stories, investment had a bigger risk, but now it's a lower. So I'm asking that. I believe that investors should see the opportunity more than the risk in this not mature ecosystem, and build this bridge and build this thing up. So
thank you, Mostafa. Yeah. Absolutely a very valid point. I think the opportunities are immense, and sometimes don't let the risk stop you from looking at the opportunities. And if you're a real true investor who's on the hunt for serious business deals, Africa is your place. Now, Oscar, please, over to you.
Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you. Yeah.
Sorry. It's great that we are speaking about opportunity here, because the numbers speak by themselves. There's this African proverb that says, "Who reaches the spring first drinks the purest water." So the countries who are adapting now, they are leading. So nobody predicted the coronavirus in 2019. Nobody anticipated a lockdown, but turning each traditional activity into a digital version was a prediction. So I would say that now in statistics saying that in 2050, Africa, one in 4 people would be African. That equals to 2,500 million inhabitants in Africa, equals to 5 European communities. That's another huge opportunity that we should know, and we need to get advantage of our continent. So, but now for that we need also to continue gain skills, right? And Africa may adopt protective policies only when it is fully self-sufficient. So for that, I will say, if I may address directly to the AU, I would say we need to increase, support to locate more funds to support the skills of Africans. That way we could increase the capacity of products made in Africa. We could also, we need access to scarce resources, such as energy, primary raw materials. We also need adequate management of all areas that with great potential of commercial growth. Let's say intellectual property rights, certification of services, investment, public procurement, and most important, as I said from the beginning, skills. Skills means human resources. So we need to make sure that our people are ready to the opportunity, to seize the opportunity when the opportunity is there. So this is what I will contribute in this. What we need always as entrepreneurs, as business people, skills, funding, networks. And once the opportunity is there, we can seize it, we can deliver without forgetting the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar, and thank you, all 3 of you. I think, there's quite a lot of feedback you've given in such little time, and really ties in with quite a lot of work that we've been doing. I think, especially with yourself, Alastair, I mean, if I ask you to please come back on, a lot of the work we've been doing with the African Union is really looking at, okay, how can we support businesses? Because even with COVID, right, and the challenges that COVID, Africa's been hit really hard. We have the smallest kind of percentage in terms of vaccines, right, across the world. So we're being hit hard. And all your points around creating made in Africa, like you were saying, Oscar, is absolutely fundamental. making sure that we're building those skills and talent to be able, to move into this digital revolution is critical. Your points, Mostafa, around, the investments and that perceived risk of investment versus the opportunities, very, very vital. I think, again, back to yourself, Gbontwi as well, your points around actually, really making sure that we can collaborate and work together is critical. Now, Alastair, I really wanted to bring you back in because that we've been drumming on and on, you and I, about a lot of these issues that have been pointed out by the businesses themselves, right? And you are very much at the heart of doing a lot of the e-commerce activity in South Africa, but also beyond Africa. Now, what are your points around actually, what are we kind of not getting? What are we not doing to enable these businesses to actually scale? And then is there any kind of regulatory challenges that we have in place that we need to look at? And finally, this is just wrap it up. I know you have to go fairly soon, but what do you see as the main takeaway for you? And then I'll head back to everybody else to kind of give us their views around their final takeaways. So Alastair, please, over to you before you rush and leave us.
I'm not going to leave you immediately, I can promise you that. And there is another African saying, which is, don't shout at the crocodiles before crossing the stream. So we need to also to be careful of crocodiles and make sure that we don't insult them before we go across the stream. I very quickly Googled as I was out of the room, as it were. There are now 1.38 billion Africans estimated, and it's estimated that 60% of those are under the age of 25. It just gives you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, how big the issue is in terms of people and in terms of the youth, and how important it is to get the youth involved and properly educated and properly employed in Africa in the future. Coming on to the issues that we are facing in terms of e-commerce, we've talked a bit about payments and particularly payments across frontiers. The African Export-Import Bank has just introduced last week a new system, Pan-African system for payments across the 55 frontiers. And by the way, there are 42, I think, maybe a few more than 40 anyhow, currencies in Africa. So if you can imagine, as a businessman operating, let's say in Europe, where you have the euro and then a couple of other currencies, and then suddenly you're faced with over 40 currencies. It is a big issue. It's one which Anna also mentioned, and which we need to find a solution to. Cryptocurrency may be that. In terms of regulation, yes, I mean, the issue is a big one. There are something in the region of 20 countries with consumer protection legislation. So there's a big gap there. There are 28 countries with data protection or data privacy legislation. So there's still a big gap there as well. There are a lot of differences and non-tariff barriers on things like investment, things like remittance of payments in foreign currencies, or just when do you have to pay VAT? In some countries, the national companies don't have to pay VAT until they've reached a certain level, which for foreigners is made much lower. So they have to pay VAT much earlier in their operations. These sorts of things are very big issues. So what the CFTA is doing is looking at all these things. It is going to produce various conventions to guide Africa into a single market, if you like. There will be a protocol on e-commerce, which we expect by the end of this year. There's a protocol now being done on investments. There's the protocol on other issues around the creation of a single market. There are some conventions being put together by the African Union on, for example, intellectual property, where a lot of countries have intellectual property laws which are what one might call pre-digital, and they need to be updated. So enormous amount of work on legislation to level the playing field so that there can be a one-stop shop within Africa. And these are things that we're looking forward to, that we are talking to regulators about and trying to ensure that they help bring up consumer protection to a level where people feel trust in what they're buying, and also to create what you've just said, a made in Africa, which is really something to be proud of, a badge to be proud of. Maybe the value chain issues that the rest of the world are suffering at the moment, maybe these will benefit the creation of a more strong intra-Africa trade. Who knows? Thank you.
Fantastic. No, Alastair, thank you very much. I think you've covered it very well. And I really want to thank the whole panel. I'll be coming back for if you give me just 3 words, please, because we've got literally a few minutes in terms of your key takeaways. I also want to just pick up on what Alastair was saying. You know, we've talked about payments, we've talked about remittances, we've talked about currency, right? The different currency. Africa is looking into a single currency at the moment. We have upcoming a very big 1 week long event, actually, you know, from the 23rd November all the way to the end of that week, as well as a retreat in Kenya to cover exactly those topics. So, you know, payments, remittances, and everybody here is going to turn up, whether you like it or not. We're going to invite you, and we want you, all of you, to please come and participate in that, because that will give you a bit more visibility. It also focuses around where can you invest in Africa? How can you invest securely, right? Because it's a huge opportunity, as we've outlined today. So do join us for that. But now, just to close us off, I'll start with Anna to please give me in 3 words, you know, your kind of key takeaways and key points that you want to finish off with, and then we'll move over to the gentleman as well.
Okay, let me apologize ahead of time that I'll be giving 3 very short phrases, right? So 1, increase investment into African startups through also considering a gender lens and geographical spread. 2nd is the right infrastructure in place and the right policy and regulatory environment is critical. And 3rd is support and collaborate with innovation hubs, incubators and accelerators on the continent in order to support the sorts of innovations and startups that will create jobs, that will create innovations across various sectors and create wealth and significantly boost the African economy, even looking at subsections such as digital trade and manufacturing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anna. Mostafa, please, your 3 points.
Okay. The first point is for policy making, to push government to build a better and healthier policy and regulation for startups and entrepreneurs. The second part is support programs for incubator and the entrepreneur himself, the awareness and the education, the deep education to give more in entrepreneurship. The last one is which I said, for investment to investors can come and take the bigger risk for the bigger opportunity.
Thank you. Gbontwi, over to you, please. Your 3 points.
I'll go with the 3 words, I think, to treat Africa as borderless. Treat Africa as borderless.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's great. Oscar, to you, please. You're on mute.
Sorry. So I would say stop playing catch up, but rather be anticipating. And the second thing is to increase the capacity of products made in Africa, meaning to the skills of people. And the third thing and last will be to be a futurist person, meaning let's think more on how our conscious actions affecting our next generation of entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oscar. Wow, I mean, what a fascinating panel. You guys just literally have really exemplified what Africa has to offer. I mean, I've got no more to add. I'll bring Natalie back in because I think, Natalie, you've got some takeaways as well from the ICC. And thank you so much, Natalie, and the whole ICC team for hosting us. Today. It's been a real pleasure. I'm very, very excited about the future, as you can tell. And yeah, looking forward to connecting with everybody. Please make sure you follow the upcoming events, you know, both the ones that Anna is doing and the ones that we have coming up in November around currency in Africa. Thank you so much. Natalie, please.
Thanks, Michelle. And thank you to everyone who's been part of the discussion today. As you know, ICC ITPW is truly a global event. I think we cover every single continent apart from Antarctica, which is something for us to work on in 2022. So thank you so much for taking part. We are producing takeaways after this week-long event that will be released on the Monday following the Friday, the 22nd. It will be takeaways from all of our sessions, including the one that you've watched today. Plus, I just wanted to say a few closing remarks. First off, do make sure that you join us at 2 o'clock later on today for the Digital Standards Initiative session that we'll be running. Also, in terms of what the ICC is going to be releasing, today we have and will be releasing some business cases that shed some light on legal reform and build the business case around legal reform to help recognise electronic transferable records. So those business cases will touch upon UK, Germany, and also the G7. So some really exciting stuff that's going on here at the ICC to really help drive and remove some of the barriers to digital trade. So do make sure that you pay attention to the documents that are available on Spotcard on the virtual platform, because those business cases will be announced today. We also have a closed session at lunchtime about these business cases, and again, they'll be made available to everyone after the event. Just wanted to let you know that this will be available for 7 days, this recording, if you have already registered. If you've got colleagues that you'd like to get access to this recording, they just need to register themselves on the platform. So that's it from all of us here. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Alastair. Thank you to all of our panelists. And we hope to see you at the next event later today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.